So we continue with our sermon series, Weapons of Victory. The first week, we looked at what weapon of victory? Yes, faith. And last week, we looked at worship. And we realized there's a guy called Jehu in the Bible who was a king, which we didn't know. And we saw how his faith enabled him to win battles against Ahab and even kill Jezebel. And then we also saw how his worship was limited and how, us guys sometimes do that with God. We tell him, wewe ni wa Sunday peke yake, 10 to 12. After that, we'll see you next Sunday, 10 to 12. And even the other things that we have not really submitted to him. And today, we are going to look at thanksgiving as a weapon of victory. Yes. So I'm going to contrast between the children of Israel and Paul. So most of it is just going to be like a run through of Exodus, I think from verse 1 to a little bit of chapter 1 to chapter 3, and then a little bit of Exodus 7 to 15, and then we'll look at Paul, and then I will draw a conclusion to thanksgiving as a weapon of victory. So when we look at the children of Israel, from the time they came to Israel, they were 70 in number. That's the clan of Jacob. They came to Egypt because there was drought or famine, and when they came, their brother Joseph was made second in command after Pharaoh, and he did some tricks on them until finally they came and settled in Egypt. Them settling in Egypt was just but for a moment. However, they stayed longer than they were expected to stay. As they stayed in Egypt, they became exceedingly fruitful. They multiplied greatly. They increased in numbers and became so numerous that the land was filled with them. That is in Exodus 1:7. Remember, the king that was there before, or the Pharaoh that was there before, had a good rapport with Joseph. But after he died, the new king that came in, Joseph meant nothing to him. And he saw how the Israelites had become too numerous. He said to his people that they must deal with the Israelites shrewdly. That is Exodus 1:8 to 10. The shrewd treatment starts, but the Israelites still multiply and spread to a point that Pharaoh ordered that every Hebrew boy that is born must be thrown into the Nile. This is Exodus 1:11 to 22. Then comes in Moses. Moses is born. His mother and his sister, they come up with a plot to hide him until he gets to a specific age, and then they put him in the Nile, and then the daughter of Pharaoh sees him, and they take him and they take care of him. However, in Exodus 2, chapter 2, towards the end, we see the children of Israel crying to God because of the harsh treatment and the shrewd treatment that they were going through. So they cried out to God that God would help them and that God would save them from the slavery they were in the land of Egypt. And God felt it. God had mercy on them. God was moved by their cry. And because of this, God called out Moses. After Moses is born, you know what happens. He goes, gets married to the daughter of Jethro, goes to the wilderness, and then God calls him as he was in the wilderness. And so God calls Moses to come and save the children of Israel. So Moses comes. Of course, Moses has all these excuses because he thinks he cannot do it. However, at the end, God is like, who is sending you? It is me. And so Moses goes. He talks to Pharaoh. Pharaoh complicates things. And then God starts to do very, very visible signs such that no one will say, I didn't see it. You know those things that happen in your life and you're like, this one is God. This one cannot be man. It cannot be me. It is God. And these visible signs, the first signs were when Moses went to approach Pharaoh and ask him to let the children of Israel go to the wilderness to worship God. And after the three signs, Pharaoh was not giving in. And then the plagues came. So we went from the first plague to the 10th plague, which was the death of the firstborn sons. Actually, it doesn't say firstborn sons, but it says the death of the firstborns. And after all those 10 visible signs, on the 10th one, Pharaoh gives up and releases the children of Israel. But after the children of Israel have been released, he realizes that who is going to do all this work? Let's go after them. And when they go after them, they can see them coming and they're like, we do not even have any weapon to fight against Pharaoh and his army. But God tells Moses, you worry not, I will create a way in the sea, in the Red Sea. And God parts the Red Sea. The children of Israel cross to the other side. And as the army and Pharaoh come, they get swallowed by the Red Sea and they all die. As in, these are not signs that you will just look at them and be like, apana. These ones, as in you just see that this is God. And so after they have crossed, in Exodus 7:14 to 32, we see the whole crossing of the Red Sea and everything that was happening. And then they come to this other side and they celebrate by singing the famous song of Moses and Miriam. And then they continue with their journey. But as they continue with their journey, when they encounter any challenge, what is the first thing they used to do? Grumble, complain, as in, that is all they thought of. After they prayed to God and asked God to rescue them from the slavery in Egypt, God hears them, remembers the promise that he made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and calls out Moses in the wilderness to come and save them. Yani God does all these visible signs that even when you ask someone, they'll be like, hey, even if they're not a believer, they'll be like, I don't think that is normal. That is out of this world. They even, you imagine Indian Ocean. Let's just imagine together. Uko Indian Ocean, umeenda Mombasa. And God tells you, I want to go through to the other side. And I am going to split this ocean into two. And you're going to make it to the other side. And you make it to the other side. But when you make it to the other side, as you continue with your journey, as you progress with your journey, when you encounter challenges, as in a challenge as simple as lack of food, a challenge as simple as bitter water, you grumble and you complain. Or rather, they grumbled and they complain. So these were the children of Israel. Sawa sawa? I want us to, as I'm taking us through the comparison between the children of Israel and Paul, I want us to think who we are. Are we the children of Israel? Are we somewhat like Paul, somewhat like the children of Israel? You get? Now let's go to Paul. And I'm going to read 2 Corinthians 11, 24 to 27. This is Paul's CV. For those who are looking for jobs, let me read out Paul's CV and then you could compare it to yours. Or for those who are telling God, use me, I am here, I am ready, nitumie kabisa. Let me read you Paul's CV. 2 Corinthians 11, 24 to 27. 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus. Let me start a little bit up, sorry. Let me start from verse 23. Let me say 23b. I have worked much harder, been in prison more frequently, been flogged more severely, and been exposed to death again and again. 5 times, I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1. 3 times, I was beaten with rods. Once, I was pelted with stones. 3 times, I was shipwrecked. I spent a night and a day in the open sea. I have been constantly on the move. I have been in danger from rivers, in danger from bandits, in danger from my fellow Jews, in danger from Gentiles, in danger at sea, and in danger from false believers. I have labored and toiled, and have often gone without sleep. I have known hunger and thirst, and have often gone without food. I have been cold and naked. That is the CV of Paul. So Paul narrates all he has gone through as he preached the gospel across the different churches. And yet, in 2 Corinthians 12:10, he says that for Christ's sake, he delights in weakness, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when he is weak, then he is strong. Remember the CV? After all that CV, that is in 2 Corinthians 11:24 to 27. He comes to 2 Corinthians 12:10 and says that he delights in weakness, in insults, he delights, in hardships, he delights, in persecutions, he delights, in difficulties, he delights. For when he is weak, then he is strong. Remember the children of Israel. When they didn't have food, what did they do? They grumbled, they complained. But look at Paul. He's gone through all that he has gone through. And he delights, he rejoices. He rejoices in that. Let's continue. Paul also says that in Philippians 4:11-13, he learned to be content in whatever the circumstance he was in. He endured because of his profound faith and trust in Jesus Christ. Guys, I don't know whether you're able to see the contrast between Paul and the children of Israel. That he learned to be content in whatever the circumstance he was in. I'm imagining you have been praying for a job. You have been going for interviews. You have gotten even to the last part of the interview, and then you receive a rejection email. You've probably fasted. God has told you, I want you to give this much. You've probably given as much as God has asked you to give. But the rejections, they keep on coming. Who do you choose to be? Do you choose to be like the children of Israel? Or do you choose to be like Paul, who says that he's learned to be content in whatever the circumstance he's in? Do you choose to say, God, I delight in these rejections because I know these rejections do not define me, do not define the plans that you have for me? You've probably been praying for marriage as we are almost celebrating the first NCDAM marriage. Na hata, wacha nikwambie, to make matters worse, no one is even seeing you. No one is even saying hi and smiling to you in a good way. We uko tu. And you have prayed and you have listened to all the teachings that you could listen to prepare yourself. You're telling God, God, now me, I know I'm ready. And every time, like, God just misses you, shwa, He misses you again, sure. He misses you again, sure. And you're just like, and then to make matters worse, everyone in Nairobi Chapeldam is married. You even start thinking, do I start going to two different churches every Sunday? And two other churches, and you start complaining, and you're telling God, man, I don't understand. I am 35. I'm not 35. I am 30. I am 35. Like, what is it called? The clock. Yes. Biological clock is ticking. Where I thought you say, if I serve you and serve you diligently, you know what you're saying? I was serving you because I wanted you to give me this. You understand? Let us continue. Please, at the back of your mind, start asking yourself, are you the children of Israel? Or are you Paul? Are you growing towards, because it's a process. Are you coming out of being like the children of Israel and more like Paul? And Paul acknowledges in 2 Timothy 3:12 that everyone who wants to live a godly life in Jesus Christ will be persecuted. As in, guys, as long as you want to live a godly life in Jesus Christ, you will be persecuted. I have remembered a story. Let me tell you guys a story. Whether I have a testimony, it's so long. I keep on wondering when I should say it. It's long. But let me tell you guys a story. Most of you know late last year, actually mid, I quit. Actually, I quit where I used to work because it was so good. Opposite camera. And and so I started looking for a job. So a friend of mine gave me something to hold on to temporarily as I'm looking for a job. And in December, God says, don't apply for jobs. Stay here. I'm like, God, how do you ask me not to look for a job that I should stay here? And you know, like, I am used to a big salary. The salary here is a stipend. And I'm just telling him, you don't understand. You don't understand. Because I had a lot of responsibilities, not just personal, but other responsibilities. But he said, you stay here. This is where I want you to be. And then was it in March or in February? We have a cousins group where we contribute a specific amount of money every month. And so my brother is such a good guy. Yani, he's my sponsor. Anyway, so he's actually a very, very nice guy. So he says, see, you contribute for these two people, and then me, I'll contribute for these two people. And then I tell him, so with that change of financial flexibility, I had to cut down on so many things. So cutting down on just doing things because I have the money and just being very strict and prudent with what I have. And so he's like, so you pay for these two people, me, I pay for this. I told him, no, me, I only have money for myself. For other people, for now, I can't, but I only have money for myself. And so because my brother, we are very tight, and I used to be his backup when he needs a loan or anything. Like, I would never turn him down. And so he's not understanding. Like him from last year, he's like, are you looking for a job? What are you doing? Are there any interviews that are coming? So this time I tell him, hey, by the way, I only have money for myself. I don't have money for anyone else. And then he goes, can I ask you something? Nasiko ubaya. Are you suffering for God? So he thought, this chick, by the way, she's brainwashed. Because now it got to a point I told them, I'm not looking for a job. Stop asking. I even told them, stop praying for a job for me. I am not looking for a job. So I think he was, as in, it really bothered him that how someone like you, like someone who's such a go-getter, you know, you can get whatever you want. Why is it that you're content with this little? And for him, he thought that actually this chick is being brainwashed. Iyo kanisa yenye ameshikilia, hii wokovu yake, it is not normal. Nakula bado, because they listen in. So he asked me, Are you suffering for God? So guys, you will be persecuted. My family. I didn't know what to do, so I just kept quiet. I told him, no, I am not suffering. I told him, yes, I'm suffering for God, but not the way you're thinking. And then I called my friend and I told her, what? Aki, you won't believe it. I said, like, what? Mimi nimefika kwa persecution. Nimefika. So we laughed about it. Initially, I was like, how can you ask me such a question? But afterwards, I was like, it's fine. So we laughed about it. And for me, it became a joke. So guys, you will be persecuted. However, we are encouraged because Paul also reminds us in 2 Corinthians 4:17 that our light and momentary troubles. You see that CV that Paul was talking about in 2 Corinthians 11. Imagine he calls it light and momentary. Can you imagine? Do you guys remember that CV? Yes. Light. Watu wenye walienda maandamano. Was it light? Anyway, our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. And James, in James 1, 2, and 3, he reminds us that to consider it pure joy whenever we face trials of many kinds, because we know that the testing of our faith produces perseverance. Guys, I don't know if you're noticing what Paul is doing. Are you noticing what Paul is doing? You're not? He's actually giving thanks. Yes. He's giving thanks. That even in that prison, he's saying, this is light and momentary trouble that is meant to achieve for me an eternal glory that outweighs them all. He does not think that everything that he went through was a big deal. Why? Because he knew that as long as he lives a godly life in Jesus Christ, he will be persecuted. And he's grateful because it means he's doing that which God has called him to do. I like this thing that people say that when you're a believer and you're not encountering any challenges, you're not encountering any convictions, you should check who you're working with. It just might be you're working with the devil. As in, you're not receiving any convictions. When you read your Bible, there is no revelation. When you spend your time in prayer, there is nothing. I'm not just saying that it should only be challenges, but even all these other things that you gain as you grow in God and as you follow Christ, they are not happening. So you should probably check. And so Paul was very grateful. For him, he was okay because he knew that he is running a good race. When you look at the children of Israel, they had something I like calling this thing for Gen Zs, I have forgotten. They had this entitlement, and it's like they forgot that they're the ones who actually cried out to God and asked God to save them. And at some point, they're telling Moses, why did you get us out of Egypt? Like right now, we'll be eating, we'll have meat in our tables, we'll have bread in our tables. Look at us now. We don't even have clean water. Why did you bring us out of Egypt just to make us suffer? And they forget they are actually the ones who asked God to bring them out of Egypt, and God just answered their prayer through someone. So in fact, Moses was not even the one to blame. It was them to blame. I mean, if they were comfortable, why were they calling God? Why were they asking God to save them? And I kept trying to read, and the only time that I see them giving thanks is only when God delivers them out of Egypt. And they're only giving thanks because they have received. They are not giving thanks because, all those visible signs and wonders. I mean, we need to give thanks every single day, every single minute, every single second. But we see Paul doing the opposite of that. And to some extent, I think, or I feel like their lives became, actually it is true, because the journey they were supposed to take that journey for a very short time, but it ended up being a journey for over how many years? 40 years. Just because they were complaining and grumbling and murmuring. So God kept on taking them around and around and around. And the enemy kept on walking with them and walking with them and walking with them. Because as they complained, they invited him. As they grumbled, they invite him. As in, God does not have space at all. And sometimes this is who we've become. This is who we've become. You know, you pray and you ask God, God, I want you to move me from this state. Let me use a good example, a practical example, even for me. You pray and tell God, Aki, God, I am ready. Bring the man, bring the man. God brings the man. 1 year down the line, you have a very small misunderstanding. God, now, who told you to bring this man? Why? You get? As in, you forgot. And you just, instead of coming and say, God, thank you for I prayed for this man. And thank you because this is the man that you picked for me. God, this is what we are going through. I do not understand. I am angry. I am not feeling loved. But God, because I am the one who prayed, and because it is you who gave, you have the solution. Give me the solution. But you're just like, no, I can't be content with such things. I can't. As in, every time your socks are in the seat, every time, every single time. That is who the children of Israel were. And what are you doing? You're calling in the enemy. You're telling the enemy, God picked, but his choice was not good. You could probably give me another choice. And he will plant a choice. And he can even plant a choice on the other side. Because now you've gotten to a point where you're not taking care of your household. You're not praying for your husband. And so you're just allowing the enemy to creep in. God, you've prayed for a job. God has given you a job. Yes, my testimony, part of my testimony. So I did I? I don't know. Anyway, God said now I can finally look for a job. And when I thought, or rather when I started looking, he just brought. And when he just brought, it's funny, guys, because God had already answered that prayer. Like, let's say, like, let me give an example. Like last week on Thursday, God had already answered the prayer. When the job came on Monday, I'm telling this guy, let me pray about it. And then it's Monday. And then that week was so funny. As in, have you ever had a week? As in 1 week, it was the week after prayer on the mount. Like the week on the prayer, it was so fired up. Like I just went back home with a lot of fire in my heart. And then I come to this new week and I'm just like, I'm calling it funny because I don't want to use a bad name. And I'm like, okay, what is happening? Why the shift? And it caught me and I was like, let me go and pray. And so I went and prayed and told God, this is the day that you have made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. I know you're going to put a smile on my face. And like that, and I finished. That was on Thursday, but on Monday, I'd said, let me pray about it and get back to you. On Wednesday, I was supposed to give back feedback on Wednesday at 2 p.m. And I'm like, God, you're not speaking. How can I say yes or no if you're not speaking? By the way, he was not speaking. And I remembered I called someone, I said, I've been praying for this. You remember this story? God is not speaking. And then the person is like, but God answered you. I'm like, he did, yes, on Thursday. I'm like, oh, yes. You see? Like I'd forgotten completely. And God is like, Sasa, who you? I had already said yes. She's here bothering me. I need to attend to Siki. You know? And in fact, guys, on that Monday morning when I received that call, I didn't even give thanks. I was just like, wow, God, what do I say? Yes or no? And I was just like, let's go, let's go, let's go. And so this job came, and probably, I'm not praying this for myself. In the middle of the way, I might come across hiccups. I might come across bumps. So how will I react to it? Will I give thanks, or will I allow the enemy to even make the situation worse? It's a thin line, because sometimes you forget and it catches you like, and you're just like, thank you, Jesus. Thank you even for this situation, because you're doing something good out of it. As in, you just become delusional. Because and someone asks you, how are you grateful for being in a stormy season? And right there, that's your weapon of victory. You're already confessing that you have won, right? You're not confessing that you're defeated. You're not confessing that your God is defeated. You're confessing that you have won. You're confessing that God has, Pastor Philip talked about Game of Thrones. I have never, ever watched it. And he said, for Game of Thrones, the person who loses has to die. But for us guys, we know it's like we are fighting a battle that we have already won. So we are not going to die. Apana, it is just to strengthen our faith and to keep going. So imagine that is who you are. And then when a challenge comes, you're like, oh God, I am even defeated. How? And on the cross, Jesus said it was finished. You come. Me nowadays, I tell the enemy, when you finish, you will go. Let me focus. And you continue, right? So how do we live? I see the tea is being served. How do we live a life of thanksgiving, regardless of our circumstances, and make it become our weapon of victory? We are so good at giving thanks when good things happen. After you come and say, God, I am giving because of what you have done for me. You even give more than you give. You know, because God has done it. You will even come and testify, hey guys, let me tell you, God. But then, what happens, and how do you use thanksgiving as a weapon of victory when victory does not look like it's happening? You know, how do you feel warm and hot in such a cold season? Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things, all, good, bad, spaghetti, whatever, God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. Nairobi Chapeldam, do we love God? Yes. We do. Are we called according to his purpose? So, do we know that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him and who have been called according to his purpose? Sasa niulize, who has a white trouser? Diana's sister. If someone just splashes mad at you right now, let's assume you guys didn't come with a car, so you have to go and use the matatu. What will be your reaction? You'll be mad. Now we are saying that in all things. So instead of being mad and say, okay, fine. I know it's a process. Amenirushia matope. I forgive them. And I know God in all things. So probably you're supposed to go for a date. You have to go back home, change. You'll be late for your date, but you will still make it. There's probably something you have avoided. I don't know if you guys saw this. There was, I think it's Air Asia that had an accident. Brazil. Yes. It was Air Asia, or I can't remember which airline it was. And actually someone was saying that there were people in the airport who missed that flight, and they caused chaos. And that person was saying, I'm just wondering what those people are doing right now that they have seen that this flight had an accident and everyone died. See, that is us. Isn't that us? Yes. So, we are trusting that God is working everything out for our good if we love him and if we have been called according to his purpose. So what is that challenge? What is that season? What is that situation? What is it? What is it? Do you believe that God is working, that in all things that God is working for your good? Because if you do, then instead of complaining, murmuring, grumbling, feeling disappointed, feeling defeated, you should be praising him. You should be saying, God, I can't wait to see. I can't wait to give this testimony. That is number one. Number two, 1 Thessalonians 5:16-18. Paul says, rejoice always. Rejoice? Rejoice once. Rejoice only when we are moving from this place to a very big place. Rejoice when your salary is being delayed. Yes. Because it is God who provides. It is not your boss who provides. So even if it delays, who's your provider? It is not your boss. God will figure it. I am his child. He cannot let his child suffer. So are we rejoicing even when our salaries delay? Rejoice always. So start putting those those ones that you're like, I rejoice in this. Pray continually. Give thanks for this is God's will for us in. Rejoice always. Pray. Give thanks for it is what? Number 3. By being contented. Apostle Paul's advice to Timothy was, godliness with contentment is great gain. That is 1 Timothy 6:6. I remember I was sharing with Pastor Kibet and I was telling him, I think it was beginning of this year. No, so guys, when did I run out of my savings? Mwanzo hii mwaka somewhere, yes. So yes, I ran out of my savings. And guys, me, I save. I save. So I remember that day my friend was at my place and I was paying rent from the last of my savings. And I just started crying. And I just cried. I couldn't, it's in a backup plan. Yes, I have a stipend, but I don't have a backup plan. The stipend cannot be saved, guys. I cried. I really cried. And so I thank God for my friends because when I start crying, they start praying. And as she was praying, I'm just like, Sasa, you. Is prayer what I need right now? But anyway, I cried, she prayed, we prayed. I made some very not so good comments, which I repented after. And then after that, I don't know, contentment just came. And I was telling Pastor Kibet, Aki, I don't believe. I don't have savings and I'm fine. As in, I don't have an emergency fund and I'm fine. Like, what is happening? Are you okay, Pauline? Like, and even one of my friends, and she's born again, she's like, me, I don't understand you. How are you not all over the place looking for something? I'm like, sir, God said, I don't look. The only thing that I can do is give thanks and be content. And I was content. And so you can only be that content if you are in Christ. As in, there are some things that even me, if you ask me, I'll tell you, Aki, ask God, I don't know. I don't, like, if you knew me then and now, as in, I just tell you, I don't know. And that is what Paul was reminding Timothy, that godliness with contentment is great gain. Because you will now never feel like you're missing out on something or you're losing out on something. And you will not have a place of complaining and asking God, why me? When you look at your peers, God, nilikukosea wapi? Who is their God? You know. And he was reminding Timothy that they came into the world with nothing and will take nothing out. And as long as they had food and clothing, they ought to be, you see, as long as they have what? Food and, no TV, no savings plan, no home of their own, no furniture, as in just food and clothing. What are some of the obstacles to contentment as I wind up? 1, comparison with peers. Like, where? Life is funny. Anyway, comparison with peers and comparison upwards. What we don't have rather than what we have. And this is basically because we've put for ourselves timelines. By the time I'm this, I should have this. By the time I'm here, I should have. And these are the things that will cause you not to be content, even if you're in Christ. Number 4, cultivate a culture of thanksgiving, even when going through trials of many kind. I love James 1:2. Whenever I face an obstacle, whenever I feel like things are not, I'm like, God, I am considering all, what have I forgotten? I consider it pure joy, even in this situation, and I will give you thanks. Remember, guys, a heart of thanksgiving breaks the power of the enemy over us. Also, remember, God inhabits the praises of his. And we said, if God is not inhabiting the praises of his people, who is inhabiting the people, the complaints? The devil. So that's it from me for Thanksgiving as a weapon of victory. I pray that we will practice, and it will not just be a practice, but it will be something that we long for, to give thanks in all situations. I want to give us an assignment. I know we have a gratitude jar. Even if we don't have it, we have on our phones, because we have become digital, we have a place where we write what we are grateful for, right? Ama, it's not in this church. You have, right? I want you to start thinking of those difficult seasons, those hard seasons that are actually places of thanksgiving. That if that didn't happen, you wouldn't be where you are today. Me, I have, but that one I will not share. But I want you to start giving thanks even for those, so that then it does not become transactional, that only when he does is when you give thanks. But even when he doesn't, you still give thanks. Sawa sawa.